Welcome. This is Capitalization Rate and Cash on Cash Return. Real Cash Flow Advisors, LLC. My name is Jeffrey Smith. Capitalization rate. An income property is generally valued on its cash flow, either the current cash flow or the anticipated future cash flow after repositioning. The valuation of the cash flow is calculated according to the cost and structure of the available financing at the time of purchase or refinancing. The fundamental equation that is used and abused is NOI, net operating income, CPV, capitalized property value, CAP, capitalization rate. Equation 1. CAP equals NOI divided by CPV. Buying the income property for all cash CPV will generate an annual cash flow of NOI. Thus, the return rate on the equity investment is the CAP rate. However, most income properties are purchased with a combination of debt and equity to increase the yield on the equity through leverage. Many real estate brokers, including CCIM, Certified Commercial Investment Members, abuse the cap rate by saying that it represents the risk or safety in a specific market or submarket according to what other comparable properties have sold in the past. That is nonsense. Others also point to competitive investments like U.S. Treasury bonds and notes to compare the yields with a cap rate. That is also nonsense. The cap rate is not a qualitative measure of risk, but rather it is a quantitative measure of blended yield requirements for both debt and equity. As I mentioned above, the cap rate is purely a function of the cost and structure of available financing that reflects the required yields of the investment tranches. Income properties are almost always purchased with a combination of debt tranches and equity tranches. Each tranche requires a minimum periodic yield, referred as a debt constant, loan constant, mortgage constant, or yield constant. The constant is simply the periodic cash flow divided by the initial investment. The annual constant is the periodic constant multiplied by the number of cash flow periods in 1 year. Debt amortization is not considered as it is a separate agreement between the lender and the borrower on whether and how the debt present value DPV will reduce over time. Two different loans can have the same debt constant, yet one loan is amortizing and the other is interest only. The tranche yield calculations are performed as if there is no change over time in debt or equity. The annual debt constant. For debt, the annual debt constant, ADC, is calculated as the annual debt service, ADS, divided by the initial debt present value, DPV. ADS, annual debt service. DPV, initial debt present value. ADC, annual debt constant. Equation 2. ADC equals ADS divided by DPV. The ADC is derivable from the interest rate and amortization periods by using a financial calculator or a spreadsheet. The periodic interest rate is the annual interest rate divided by the number of payment periods per year. The debt present value, DPV, is the loan amount set to -1. The debt future value, DFV, is set to 0 for fully amortizing or set to DPV for interest only. Calculate the periodic payment, PMT, then multiply the number of periods in a year. The result is the annual debt constant ADC. Gross return on equity. This is called the cash-on-cash return. For equity, the annual yield constant, AYC, is also called the gross return on equity, ROE, or the cash-on-cash return, CCR. The ROE is calculated as the net cash flow before tax, NCF, divided by the initial equity investment, EQT. Equity and debt are flip sides of the same coin. NCF, net cash flow before tax. EQT, initial equity investment. LTV, loan to value. ETV, equity to value. ROE, gross return on equity, also called cash on cash return, CCR. Equation 3. LTV equals DPV divided by CPV. Equation 4. ETV equals 1 minus LTV. Flip the debt for the equity. Equation 5. NCF equals NOI minus ADS. Equation 6. EQT equals ETV times CPV. Equation 7. ROE equals NCF divided by EQT. Calculating the capitalization rate. I reviewed a commercial income property certified appraisal. The appraiser mentioned two apparently different ways of calculating the cap rate. 1. The weighted average capital cost, WACC, which is the weighted average of the yields for debt and equity. 2. The debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, which is used by many bankers that considers the debt coverage ratio, DCR, applied to the net operating income, NOI. The weighted average capital cost, WACC, calculation is Equation 8. Cap equals the product ADC times LTV plus the product ROE times ETV. The debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, calculation is DCR, debt coverage ratio. Equation 9. DCR equals NOI divided by ADS. Equation 10. Cap equals DCR times ADC times LTV. Most commercial real estate brokers and appraisers don't understand that the two formulae, weighted average capital cost, WACC, equation 8, and debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, equation 10, are mathematically identical. The appraiser simply guessed at the ROE for the WACC equation to calculate a cap rate from the published debt parameters of a few commercial lenders. Then the appraiser guessed at a DCR for the debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, to calculate a different cap rate. Cap rates are not guesswork. The debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, is the preferred choice for calculating the cap rate because it is quickly derived from the debt parameters. Also, the DCR is a critical measure of how well the financing can tolerate recessionary pressures on income and expense. A low cap rate means a low DCR that risks negative cash flow, default, in the event of reduced income or increased expenses. Also, the ROE is derived precisely from the same three variables, DCR, ADC, and LTV. Finally, the weighted average capital cost, WACC, that is cap equals the product ADC times LTV plus the product ROE times ETV, equation 8, is identical to the debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, that is CAP equals DCR times ADC times LTV, equation 10. The two equations 8 and 10 initially appear to be quite different. A little substitution of variables will demonstrate the equality. A basic identity equation from 7th grade school algebra, equation 11, we will use this several times. The product A times B divided by the product C times D equals the quotient A divided by C times the quotient B divided by D, which equals the quotient A divided by D times the quotient B divided by C. First, derive the cap rate in terms of the DCR, ADC, and LTV. Equation 12. Cap equals DCR times ADC times LTV. Expand the terms. DCR equals NOI divided by ADS. ADC equals ADS divided by DPV. LTV equals DPV divided by CPV. Equation 13. Cap equals NOI times ADS times DPV divided by ADS times DPV times CPV. This is the translation using equation 11. ADS, NOI, DPV, ADS, CPV, DPV. ADS times DPV appears on both sides of the division, so they cancel out. Equation 14. Cap equals DCR times ADC times LTV equals NOI divided by CPV. This is the identity. Equation 10 equals equation 1. Calculating the gross return on equity. Next, derive the ROE in terms of the DCR, ADC, and LTV. DCM, debt coverage margin. CFM, cash flow margin. LR, leverage ratio. LTD, leverage to debt. Equation 15, LR equals 1 divided by ETV. Equation 16, LTD equals LR minus 1. Equals 1 divided by ETV minus 1. Substitution. Equals 1 divided by ETV minus ETV divided by ETV. Substitution. Equals the difference 1 minus ETV all divided by ETV. Substitution. Equals LTV divided by ETV. Substitution. Equation 17. DCM equals 1 divided by DCR equals ADS divided by NOI. Equation 18. CFM equals 1 minus DCM equals 1 minus 1 divided by DCR. Substitution. Equals 1 minus ADS divided by NOI. Substitution. Equals NOI divided by NOI minus ADS divided by NOI. Substitution. Equation 19. CFM equals the difference NOI minus ADS, all divided by NOI. Substitution. Equals NCF divided by NOI. Substitution. Equation 20. CFM equals 1 minus 1 divided by DCR. Substitution. Equals DCR divided by DCR minus 1 divided by DCR. Substitution equals the difference DCR minus 1 all divided by DCR. Substitution. Equation 21. ADS equals DCM times NOI. Equation 22. NCF equals CFM times NOI. Equation 23. ROE equals NCF divided by EQT equals the product CFM times NOI divided by the product ETV times CPV. Substitution equals CFM times the quotient NOI divided by CPV all divided by ETV. Substitution. Equation 24. ROE equals the product CFM times CAP all divided by ETV. Substitution. Equals CFM times DCR times ADC times LTV all divided by ETV. Substitution equals CFM times DCR times ADC times LTD. Substitution. Equation 25. ROE equals the difference 1 minus 1 divided by DCR times ADC times LTD. Substitution equals the difference DCR minus 1 times ADC times LTD. Substitution. Measuring the quality of net cash flow. At this point, a critical investment concept that many real estate brokers and investors miss is the leverage to yield LTY. The LTY is the ROE divided by the cap. The ratio is the multiplier on the cap rate to produce the ROE. The LTY measures the true leverage on the equity investment. If the ratio is less than 1, then the equity investment has negative leverage. If the ratio exactly equals 1, then the equity has neutral leverage. If the ratio is greater than 1, then the equity investment has positive leverage. LTY, leverage to yield. Equation 26, LTY equals ROE divided by cap equals the quotient NCF divided by EQT all divided by the quotient NOI divided by CPV. Substitution. Equation 27. LTY equals the product CFM times NOI divided by the product ETV times CPV, all divided by NOI divided by CPV. Substitution. Equation 28. LTY equals the quotient CFM divided by ETV times the quotient NOI divided by CPV, all divided by the quotient NOI divided by CPV. This is the identity translation. NOI divided by CPV appears on both sides of the division, therefore it cancels out. Equals CFM divided by ETV. Therefore, to achieve positive leverage, the cash flow margin, CFM, must be greater than the equity to value ratio, ETV. Avoid neutral or negative leverage because the return rate is less than investing all cash. Non-positive leverage risks default on the debt and losing the equity in foreclosure. Mathematically identical cap rate calculations. Finally, demonstrate that the weighted average capital cost, WACC, equation 8, is mathematically identical to the debt coverage ratio method, DCRM, equation 10. Equation 29, CAP equals ADC times LTV plus ROE times ETV equals ADC times LTV plus the difference of DCR minus 1 times ADC times LTD times ETV. Substitution. Equation 30, CAP equals ADC times LTV plus the difference DCR minus 1 times ADC times LTV divided by ETV, all multiplied by ETV. Substitution. ETV appears on both sides of the division, so it cancels out. Equation 31, CAP equals ADC times LTV plus the difference DCR minus 1 times ADC times LTV. Distribute ADC times LTV across the difference DCR minus 1. Equation 32, CAP equals ADC times LTV plus the difference DCR times ADC times LTV minus ADC times LTV. ADC times LTV appears on both sides of the subtraction, so it cancels out. Equation 33, CAP equals DCR times ADC times LTV. From these identities, the appraiser guessing at the ROE in equation 8 or at the DCR in equation 10 is merely guessing at the effective cap rate. That's why he calculated two different cap rates for the same property and then averaged the cap rates and added a fudge factor. Calculating the true cap rate is not a guessing game. The cap rate is calculated by the cost and structure of financing. Debt yield. Another ratio of vital importance is the debt yield, dy. The debt yield, dy, is defined as the net operating income, NOI, divided by the debt present value, DPV. This is a measure of the yield to the lender when the loan is originated today, foreclosed tomorrow, and the lender repossesses the property and receives the NOI. dy, debt yield. Equation 34, dy equals NOI divided by DPV equals DCR times ADC, which equals the quotient NOI divided by ADS times the quotient ADS divided by DPV. Substitution. ADS appears on both sides of the division and cancels out, leaving NOI divided by DPV. Equation 35. DPV equals NOI divided by dy equals NOI divided by the product of DCR times ADC. Substitution. The dy involves only the DCR and ADC and uniquely determines the DPV relative to the NOI. When refinancing a property, the LTV is not needed to calculate the DPV. Only the DCR and ADC applied to the current NOI determine the DPV. However, lenders usually require an appraisal of the property to determine the effective LTV ratio and therefore the ETV ratio as a measure of protective equity if the loan defaults. Equation 36. CAP equals DCR times ADC times LTV equals DY times LTV. Substitution. The cap rate is the debt yield dy multiplied by the loan-to-value ratio. Blending multiple tranches of debt or equity yields. These same equations hold true for multiple tranches of both debt and equity. The yield constant is calculated similar to equation 8 by a weighted average of the individual tranche yields divided by the sum of the tranche ratios relative to the total property value. PLTV, primary loan-to-value ratio. PDC, primary debt constant. SLTV, secondary loan-to-value ratio. SDC, secondary debt constant. CLTV, combined loan-to-value ratio. WDC, weighted debt constant. Equation 37. CLTV equals PLTV plus SLTV. Equation 38. WDC equals the product of PDC times PLTV plus the product of SDC times SLTV, the total sum divided by CLTV. Negotiating price is negotiating equity. Therefore, when a buyer is negotiating with a seller for a purchase price, the negotiation involves the cap rate that determines the price. The property can afford to pay a specific debt service for a specific DCR and ADC applied to the NOI. Thus, negotiating the cap rate is negotiating the remaining variable LTV, which implies negotiating the ETV, how much equity the buyer invests in the property. All of that depends on the cost and structure of the financing that is available to the buyer and not on what other properties have fetched. The buyer cannot recreate the cost and structure of financing on those other comparable properties. Therefore, there is no sensible definition of comparable cap rates. When you are buying an income property, you are buying an income stream, NOI. Negotiate a cap rate that fits the cost and structure of the financing that is available to you, and then divide the actual NOI by the calculated cap to arrive at a price that the property can afford to pay. You can learn more by contacting us. For fast response, we recommend email contact. This has been Capitalization Rate and Cash on Cash Return. My name is Jeffrey Smith, and thank you for the opportunity to serve.